Finally. Welcome. First of all, welcome to Čiurlionys National Museum of Art. As you can see, beautifully dressed in modernism, and as the rest of the city, rich in colorful history, therefore colorful dress. In order to keep it for at least 100 years, use, first of all, the good material, timeless design, think about the function, and, of course, cherish it with love and responsibility. To make this comparison even more convincing, over 5 years, we actually heard some stories when colorful dress became a cause to assess modernist architecture, because both belong to beloved grandmother. And from something very small, like simple dress, can grow someone bigger, responsible human being. Believe me, it is so interesting to be a witness of such a changes. And we start to change, indeed, step by step. But why do we pay so much attention to modernist heritage in Kaunas as people living here? The status of Kaunas as a temporary capital provoked a huge construction boom, inspired by an optimistic belief in an independent future. More than 6,000 buildings of this period survive to this day, but not all of them were cherished and loved. So the first impulse of change was made in 2015, when Kaunas modernist architecture as a phenomenon was awarded by European Heritage Label. And even now we are trying to join the UNESCO World Heritage family. And the second one is heritage. It is for this historical layer to creatively explore the program in the framework of various projects from 2017 brings together the local heritage community. We mapped good practices in the website as well. And also we have planned to activate 365 modernist buildings with artistic residences, site-specific art projects and events inside the buildings and in the public spaces in 2022. The number, by the way, the number of 365 refers to everyday heritage and reflects one of the main our goal, to bring the culture to everyone's house and to celebrate modernism for the future in 2022. On top of that, the residents' authentic testimonies about the creation of modern city and sense of living in it today have become an incentive to create a new forms of heritage cognition, modernism interpretations. And of course, it became an inspiration for contemporary art, to mention just a few. Klosters is translated as pleats or forts, maker Aideen Barry. The film takes an inspiration from Kaunas interwar modernism epoch and the hidden stories, of course, associated with the magical city. After almost 2 years of creative process and even more than 500 local people involved, the movie will be shown in the International Film Festival with the message of more for 365. In a collaboration with international partners from modernist cities in Lviv, also in Kortrijk, Brno and Tel Aviv, over past few years we implemented actions on various modernist buildings and sites. 18 artistic projects will be presented in the International Exhibition of Modernism for the Future in Kaunas during the grand opening, of course, of European Capital of Culture, in the modernist post office building. You will hear about it later on today. It is really important to note that our local partners, their knowledge, also their creative approaches, play a crucial role in our program. Being created in forms of photography, installation, dance, experimental music, and others. Moreover, for the future city. So let's start from the first one.
Please close your eyes for a moment. Yeah. And now, And now please open your eyes and look. I'm an architect, and for the last 3 years I have been working with a non-visual perception of architecture in collaboration with the blind and visually impaired people community. Our culture is very visual, and architecture is perceived. The problem is not everybody is able to see architecture, and therefore a big part of our culture is not accessible to everybody. Not everybody is able to read the city. Community of blind and visually impaired people is wide and diverse, just like any other community. But they're very keen to learn about. So when I started these projects, I was very warmly accepted by the community as I came questioning the conventional ways the architecture is perceived. And most importantly, I came looking for partners, my co-researchers. So for the last 3 years, me and my colleagues, we're working with the blind community and doing workshops, interviews, expeditions, experiments, where we collected unique insights and alternative ways to explore medium of architecture. So we've developed tools and methods for non-visual perception. The tactile approach allows us to experience the whole building, the whole architectural concept from the small details, from the smallest elements. And the audial approach is more universal, more easily accessible, and it employs a whole used to read architecture and understand it without our eyes. But learning these tools is like learning a foreign language. This book is our city. It's our city that you use every day, and we're not able to read it before. And the city and architecture is full of stories to discover. Our tools are opening up new and exciting ways to understand architecture for all of us. So I would with the blind and visually impaired people. And this December, these tools and all the information will be accessible online. And thank you very much for your attention, and I hope we will have more personal conversations after the presentations. Thank you.
Hello, I am Andrius Ropolas. I'm an architect from the Office de Architectura, and I will start my presentation with this picture. We can get the picture on the screen. With this picture of the floor tiles from Kaunas Central Post Office, where you will see 18 artists works interpreting modernist heritage, like Vilta already presented. And I just would like to share with you some of it. Is that things can always be questioned, nothing is static, and things can be always improved. We, from our experience as architects, know that last-minute supplier chains, downgrading material, and it's hard to imagine that it has been any different 100 years ago, when there were even fewer material and bigger technological limitations. Therefore, it's doubtful that every old heritage building come to a dialogue with the original architect. Of course, it's not always possible, so we have this imaginary he wanted to do, but he didn't have the means, and we have those means, so we can maybe help him to finish or improve his work. To design an operation hall with curtains, removal of glass partitions, and it will be a quite big change for the building, but we hope that visitors will not really see that change. We think that if we manage to really understand the original ideas and thoughts of the architect, the design can be completely new, but feel like it was always there. And besides having this impossible conversation with the architect to discuss how the building should look like and how it could be improved, we are also very interested in coming into dialogue with the building itself. all looking for these old stories, and one of these stories is behind me on the screen. These are 2 tiles from Operation Hall in Central Post Office, and as you can see, the black and white tiles, they are swapped. And this is basically the floor of national importance. So any sane person probably would say that it has to be fixed. We think otherwise, because this is telling us a rich story. And the building is really communicating with us and telling us the story of original ambition of the architect. It is telling us the derelict approach through the Soviet times, and by exposing it and showing it, it is also showing our contemporary approach towards heritage, towards the building. And all this is coming just from those 2 tiles, and it's coming from the building. So to finish the presentation, I just want to say that working with heritage is not about making contrast or nuance. It's about finding to see the exhibition in the Central Post Office. Thank you.
From Kaunas. I represent Team Ekskursas, together today in the hall with Rasa, with Žilvinas. We're doing the guided tours, informal guided tours, open and free of charge for the Kaunas citizens, for the city guests, inside modernist buildings like this. We are sitting today in Vladimiras Dubeneckis design, Mikalojus Konstantinas Čiurlionis National Museum Auditoria, which from the outside reminds us of the crown. The crown of Ekskursas was to bring architecture closer to people, to bring simple stories to the visitors of the guided tours, and we are fixated on the short form of 45 minutes. In general, Ekskursas activities are based on interaction with building owners, social gatherings in the form of guided tours, and other informal social activities. I have some pictures in the slide. In the middle, you can see the latest poster of our cycle of 9 guided tours that last typically 3 weekends, 3 Sundays. If you are in Kaunas, please visit us this Sunday as well. We are planning to see the radio station of Sitkūnai. We have just an informal picture of happening tour. We are opening up the possibilities where people can enter the buildings that are usually closed off. We are letting them see behind the door of rooms that are usually not accessible. You can see the poster of Ekskursas 2.0 festival, which was due to pandemic happening online. We shared a bunch of digitalized interwar period books about construction. We spoke and created radio shows about construction. In May, the 3 first Sundays of May, we are presenting a festival called Grande Saison Sanuak, which will be in partnership with a nomadic curatorial platform B-Tour from Berlin. And the title refers to the 1921 spring series of tours and excursions organized by the Dada Group in Paris. So the program of 5 international artists coming here to Kaunas and interaction with 5 local guided tours will present a program of guided tours that will challenge the usual term guided tour. We will challenge the hierarchical nature of knowledge and play around the topic of tourism. In autumn, in September, we are planning to have a cycle of guided tours called Icons of Modernism, and we are planning to collaborate with local cultural organizations. We will share some activities with international dance festival Aura, and I think we will be gladly hosting you in Kaunas next year. Thank you very much.
Go plant a tree even though you have no idea who will dance in its shadow in the future. Think about it, dear human. It was your ancestors who planted it for you. These are the words of a German writer, Max Weber, which are still relevant today, especially when we are talking about the unique but disappearing wooden architecture of Žaliakalnis area. My name is Povilas Konkulevičius. I'm an architect, a dancer, a lover of wooden architecture. I'm sharing my knowledge and experience of wooden architecture with Kaunas heritage community and the artists who work with Kaunas 2022. So let me tell my story from the very beginning. For the first time, I got interested in wooden architecture because of the house which was bought by my great-grandfather in the interwar period. During the Soviet times, my great-grandfather's house was nationalized and separated in several apartments, and the condition of the house became extremely poor. When I started working on the house and its renovation, I became interested in wooden architecture and noticed that a lot of wooden houses were being demolished. Therefore, I began collecting various pieces of artifacts of these destroyed houses. I ended up with a huge collection. I was so surprised when I realized that wooden houses of Žaliakalnis have such a rich variety of decorations. It is so sad that no one cares about the documentation and preservation of it, and most of these precious details just end up in the trash. In my opinion, all these ornaments could successfully be reused in nearly built houses or turned into the reinterpreted elements that are common in Žaliakalnis neighborhood. My interest in wooden architecture and its elements became a serious hobby, and the artifacts for the collection started to come from other places, further away from Žaliakalnis and Kaunas. I have also become interested in interior details. I have found a beautiful Art Deco wardrobe in Klaipėda, and it turned out that once it was owned by a family who lived in a wooden house nearby in Kaunas, next to the KEKS fountain, where I spent my childhood. I still remember the pretty flower garden that was nurtured by our agronomist Žukas. Moreover, he was also an enthusiastic photographer of architecture. There are still quite a lot of wooden houses in Kaunas, but they are decaying and vanishing fast. New buildings that are built in their places do not fit in the local. Try to keep our connection to our motherland. Therefore, we, those who live in wooden houses of decorated elements that are common in wooden houses, which were built in must evolve. However, its evolution has to be based on local identity, unique by its ideas and details, it will strengthen and enrich our identity and encourage the future generations to continue the work that was started by us, to preserve and develop our living environment. And if the demolition and wooden house is the only possible solution, in that case, be inspired to create something new. I believe that if we work together, we can establish a place where we could collect the elements of wooden houses, to learn from it, to learn how to look after wooden houses, to share our experience, and to look after a wooden house. So this is in this center, approaching the 2022, the year of capital, Kaunas, the
My name is Agne Bagdžiūnaitė, and I will talk precisely about openness. And openness these days in Lithuania, and the work of culture, multiculturalism. And Kaunas Artist House from 2017 kind of was building this, its agenda on kind of openness is very much important in the agenda of Kaunas Artist House. And the openness also includes criticality and critical thought. And that's what our 2022 program is, the reciprocal residency that I am curating at the moment, and which is based on collaboration between the partners in the similar cities as Kaunas. We all know that smaller cities, even in the West, are very much dependent on the centers. At the same time, they get much smaller state funding and capital in general. In the cultural sector, also, it's problematic because it kind of restricts and in development of the content that would attract diverse audiences and not only the local ones. Therefore, we lack many things for contemporary art scene to develop here in Kaunas. However, the development of contemporary art doesn't mean only the spaces with the white walls. It's not only about that, and it's not what I mean. It's also about creating the content and the space for the contemporary content by thinking of what is going on around us today and how we can respond to that. Therefore, the political, economic, and social aspects do not go in separate ways when you think of culture. It doesn't mean only the spaces with the white walls. It's not only about that, and it's not what I mean. It's also about creating the content and the space for the contemporary content by thinking of what is going on around us today and how we can respond to that. Therefore, the political, economic, and social aspects do not go in separate ways when you think of culture or art in a broader sense and in terms of openness. The reciprocal residency program, DEMO, has been seeking to reach out the artists who come from the similar context like Kaunas and helping them to develop projects that do not fit in the traditional sense of art in rather conservative surroundings. The projects that respond to and reflect on our precarious, unstable, and intensive times. And Modernism for Future program of Kaunas European Capital of Culture 2022 can be seen as opportunity to have a closer look at this past in a way that you can see it in a critical way. And we need to constantly rethink our connections to the past and the older generations without indulging or pleasing them, therefore encouraging and nourishing the critical thinking means opening up for culture that would inspire us to change and grow. For the ending, I will give an example from my program. This summer, Kaunas Artists House hosted 2 artists from Serbia in the demo program. One of the artists, Maria Markovic, was working on the issue of the air pollution in Serbia. Did you know that if you hang the clothes in Serbia outside, it will smell like it's coming from the coal mine? We here can only know if someone from Serbia talks about it, if someone makes us aware of it. And culture is capable of making people aware to inform them on the issues they never thought it existed, but in playful, subtle, and intelligent ways. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Katrina. I'm not an architect, but I have interviewed, I think, 99% of the presenters today. I'm a journalist, I'm a culture journalist from Kaunas. I work in the national radio as well as magazine Kaunas Full of Culture. And I want to tell you a story about inspiration and about everyday heritage or heritage every day. When I was a small child, I went to Jonas Jablonski's school, which is in Žaliakalnis, and for me it was a very old building, a very uncomfortable school to go to, and I was very jealous to those who went to modern 90s schools. My dad worked and still works in Laisvės alėja here, and I used to go to his office every day after school with an old funicular that for me looked like a very uncomfortable bus, wooden bus. Little did I know it still is one of the oldest public transport systems in the world, I would say, not only in Europe. And my mom used to work in a radio factory, part of which was what today is the Christ Resurrection Basilica, one of the most beautiful modernist churches, I personally say, in the world. For me, it was just a warehouse, because at that day it was a warehouse, part of a radio factory. Then I went to school, I finished school, I went to university in Vilnius. I came back to Kaunas 6 years ago, and 2 weeks after I came back, Kaunas Biennial was opening in the Kaunas Central Post Office. And I had been to this office, post office, numerous times to send letters, to receive parcels, and so on. And for me, it always looked like just another post office with very uncomfortable and heavy doors. But thanks to these people today who are presenting you their case studies, their projects, their exhibitions, and their ambitions for next year and for the future to come, I am a convert, and now I am a firm believer of modernism as a citizen of Kaunas, as a resident, as a daily user of modernist buildings, as a visitor of them. I believe this is the everyday heritage that can inspire not only architects and artists, but everyone in Kaunas, Europe, and the world. And behind me are just a few examples of such inspirations that are not pieces of art, are not paintings or musical works, but are still very important for everyday people in Kaunas and abroad. I've already mentioned the magazine Kaunas Full of Culture. We have published 73 editions. Now we are in the 7th year, and each and every issue has a story or two about modernist buildings or urban decisions, or not necessarily very big buildings like this museum, which we have written about, I think, a dozen times, but also residential houses, kindergartens, and so on, even bridges, for example. A lot of issues have something modernist on the cover as well. As you can see, this is the post office here. The other project that I closely worked with is, it's Kaunastic, it's the Modernist's Guide that you all received in your goodie bags. It's just one of 30 maps we have produced together with the Kaunas Tourism Office. And I talked to the illustrator today, and he told me that this is his favorite map because he could draw the hospital he was born in and 2 schools he went into. It's also a very nice example of this human touch that makes modernism close to people's hearts. And of course, I'm very happy that we have amazing souvenirs inspired by modernist architecture. The church, the basilica I mentioned you, we have concrete jewelry that has been awarded in Japan, for example. It's not only about Europe, I'm telling you. We have amazing pins, we have great bags, and I just received an amazing bag from Vilte. I'm not sure if you can buy it, or maybe Vilte can give it to you. It's reflective, so you can wear it at night. It has a pocket. It's elegant and very useful and very functional, just as Kaunas modernism. So I believe next year we will have many more publications, souvenirs, gifts, and just everything about modernism. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hugo Herrera Tobon, and I am also not an architect, but I am an artist and designer working with mapping practices. I am the maker of the subjective atlas of Kaunas, Contemporary Perspectives on Modernism, and I am the editor and curator of Subjective Editions, which is a rhizomatic publishing initiative that disseminates editorial bottom-up mapping projects. I was born in Bogotá, in Colombia, but I have resided in a number of cities around the world, including Madrid, New York, Ulaanbaatar, Malabo, Lisbon, Athens, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and now Vilnius. And going through all this traveling, that made me question many times the idea of identity. And identity, not just my own identity, but the identity of the culture surrounding me. And when you question the culture that surrounds you and identity, then you also have to start thinking about maps. Finally, maps are the representation of our territories. Sorry, I want to have my side notes because the time is crunching. So if you look at the history of maps, cartographers devised systems that would allow us to interpret territories, but we can also see that in these maps, normally there were top power agendas that were implementing power through these cartographies. There was a time when maps were made with precious stones and were assigned to jewelers and highly skilled craftsmen. And this was not only done with the purpose of depicting a territory, but it was mostly done with the purpose of imprinting power over the population. Africa is a good example of how this top-down mapping was done. So at some point, colonizers, gathered and they decided that they would draw these lines over the territory without taking into consideration tribes and languages and aspects of the actual inhabitants of the continent. So the conclusion is that most of these maps are actually not in reality objective. The moment you start codifying layers of information to create a map, you have to start making choices, and therefore maps become political. And so they are also not objective, and therefore we also have to start critically questioning them. So how do you question the apparently objective? In 2005, a Dutch designer called Annelies de Wet, who is my associate, started a series of publications called Subjective Atlas, in which she invited inhabitants of different countries around the world to depict the reality according to how they see it. We believe that insiders are actually the best cartographers rather than outsiders. And the results of these mapping practices come out as disarming, personal, emotional, geopoetical interpretations and depictions of what people see, feel, and live. Therefore, locals become the authors. Subjective atlases show alternative and human maps that reflect upon local identity in a given time, in a given space. They are copyright-free and they disseminate virally and worldwide. This series includes publications made in the Netherlands, in Belgium, Luxembourg, Hungary, Serbia, Colombia, Mexico, Pakistan, and in Lithuania. We have been doing a pilot project in 2019 with the Garliava neighborhoods, which led then into the production of the Subjective Atlas of Kaunas. This book will be launched in the MOFU exhibition next year, starting in January. And in the project we gathered about 40 locals. We asked and inquired what they had to say and how they saw their city, and that allowed us to start understanding how they perceived modernism as well, to start creating an interpretation of it. The book will show a compendium of subjective maps and routes, visual inventories, photo collections, alternative flags, and a reality that questions the status quo. In the book you will see that most residents like modernism, some praise it, some criticize it. I am really out of time now, so I won't go extending too much, but in a nutshell I would also like to say that this book doesn't want to just be a final result or a product. We like to think that these books are also tools to question and to open up a much larger debate on social and political issues, in this case in Lithuania, in Kaunas, but also, you know, as a whole and worldwide. Thank you very much.
Hello, dear colleagues, dear guests. My name is Gintaras Česonis, and I represent Kaunas Photography Gallery. It's a gallery space, a residency house, publishing house, education program. So all activities are related and very important for us. So in every activity we try to, or whatever we start, we try to combine these things together and get something good from each of us of it. We would love to invite you to visit Photography Gallery. Unfortunately, even with a smile, I'm very sad to say it's closed because of the gallery reconstruction work. But the pedestrian street reconstruction work. But I hope people know the situation. The gallery is well situated and it's not possible to pass by and not to notice it and not to enter the gallery. So I'm very optimistic that after the street reconstruction it will be even impossible not to enter the gallery. So welcome to come back and visit us next year. And the residency program Photography is Document for Future is dedicated to research Kaunas modernism architecture, reflect and represent it in international context. Future is really uncertain now. So we invite to find a starting point, and we invite to take the starting point today. So today is the beginning of future, and we invite to try to explore what is modernism now for us in visual language. Try to define where it starts. And let's try to leave a message for future. Lithuanian and international artists together with historians, architecture researchers, art book masters, creators will look for sustainable relationship between modernism architecture and the city, citizen and time. We are seeking to present the first results already this year in form of book dummy. So as everybody knows, it's when we do publish, it's very important, many layers. It's not only content matters, but the form, design, paper, whatever. So we always try to create a book as a piece of art in a way. So we expect to have a representative book, but representative might be not the right word, because we hope that it will represent today as a message for future. Next year we expect the book published, accompanied with also photography and light installations around the city. We will collaborate with our numerous international partners. We expect artistic exchange that will be fruitful, I'm sure. The results will hopefully travel to art book fairs, where we do normally go a couple times a year. And we hope that Kaunas modernism architecture will get the attention that it really deserves. We hope to meet you in Berlin, Amsterdam, maybe Paris, but in Kaunas for sure. So looking forward.
Hello to everyone. I'm Vaidas Petrulis. I'm a historian of architecture, and in this program, actually, I represent academia. I'm from Kaunas University of Technology, teaching history of architecture, and probably I should start from the remark that as for the historian of architecture, I'm especially happy that European Capital of Culture as a phenomena, as a program, involves modern movement, and for me it's important, and as you can see the picture, and academia also finds the place in this program. And actually what I would like to recommend you for the next year, and my two most important recommendations is one is summer school, and another will be the conference on interpretation of modernism, and the conference will be on in 2022, September 22. So it's not so difficult to remember. But I also have to explain a little bit how academia is involved, and probably my perspective and what you might expect. So first of all, my first question is, when we started to discuss about involvement, modernism as a separate program, is to define and to find the Kaunas on the map of modernism of Europe. Because when we talk about modernism, when I teach in school, I start with Le Corbusier, Gropius, all the famous names. But where is Kaunas? Is it worth to talk about Kaunas? What is the message? And after the discussions, we gradually came to the idea that probably our mission is to talk about modern movement from different perspective. Let's say to decentralize the concept of modernism. And now I would say that probably modernism is kind of a iceberg with the top of which is the top of the iceberg is maybe most famous names, like already mentioned, like De Stijl, Constructivism, Bauhaus. But the whole power of modernism, the whole importance of modernism is below the water. It's modernism which is in every single city of Europe and probably even in the world. So in a way, our message is that we should know each other. We should know different places where modernism plays maybe more important role, and Kaunas is one of the places. But what we did in the conference, as you can see here, we started the program Modernism for the Future with the conference, and we invited people from different places of Europe, and not only Europe, to present the phenomena. Present the phenomena, as I said, from a bit different angle, from this decentralizing perspective. And the closing conference, which will be in 2022, it will be about interpretations of modernism. Because if we talk about modernism, which is not on the front pages of the journals and textbooks on modernism, it's from the first glimpse, it's probably not so impressive, and it needs interpretation. It needs some deeper explanation, and it's better if we explain not in academic sense, but if we explain with help of artists, with passionate people who work in the field of modernism. So what we will do in 2022, we will present different interpretations. And of course, we already, after this 5 years, we have to tell something from our experience. So it will be a kind of a sharing of our experience, but also we will invite people from different places of Europe, and not only Europe, to share other experiences of interpreting modernism.
We'll have East-East project, and all East-East project had the identical structure. It's an architectural exhibition, public event as architectural forum, and students' workshop. Now we are planning that 10 professionals and 10 students of architecture from different universities will take part in this project from each participating site. So in 2022, we are having an architecture forum with the opening venue in Žalgiris Arena on September 22, and with the hope and the wish that keynote speakers would be very known architects from Japan as Tadao Ando, Toyohito, or Kengo Kuma. I'm sure that those names are known not only to all architectural students in the world, but also, and for the most, for the people in general. The next one, we are going to get a joint exhibition for Lithuanian and Japanese architects with participating of authors and also exhibition catalog. And 3-day workshop for students. They are working together in the common groups, Lithuanian students together with Japanese, and exposition and presentation of workshop works. So now together with the curator of Paulius Vaitekūnas, who's sitting here, we are on the preparation stage of the program, and we are looking for other curators and actually enthusiastic persons for this event. And actually, I am sure that all architecture lovers, it's a must to be in 2022 in Kaunas in September on our architecture festival. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure how about you, but we actually, modernists, really like to drink coffee and have very interesting and fruitful conversations. So we are limited in time, so I really would like to thank you for your attendance. First of all, our partners and all of you, and to invite you for a cup of coffee, which is like here, and to talk with each other. And by the way, and please come next year to the European Capital of Modernism 2022. Thanks a lot.